I think I got the last of that meatball sandwich out now. Welcome back everyone to Pokemon TCAA. I am your host, Lee Satoshi, and if you remember, or even bother to watch the first video, we began our journey to not catch them all, but paint them all. And on our first episode, we encountered a sad boy known as Cubone, and we altered the artwork. And now we have ourselves a one-of-a-kind Cubone card. So, let's not delay, let's continue the journey and see who do we encounter on this episode. So we'll just kick things off here with a nice deck shuffle, so that way we can completely randomize which is the Pokemon that we'll be encountering. And yes, I do plan on doing this for each episode, so that way each deck shuffle is unique and keeps things fresh.
Who's that Pokemon? It's Pikachu! Pikachu!
Alright everyone, voiceover Lee here. So we're just going to begin by prepping the card, and I learned my lesson in the first episode and will not use regular scotch tape, but instead use a special photography scotch tape that whenever I lift the tape, it should be able to protect the card without damaging it. Then after that, I'm just going to lay down some blue scotch tape to make sure that our paint stays in place. To be totally honest, I was not expecting to run into Pikachu this soon, let alone be altering his card, but I absolutely love this absolute chunk of a unit here. I much prefer this look than his newer, slimmer look. Anyways, as you can see, we're just going to begin this process by slowly applying thick coats of white acrylic paint so we can start putting on that base coat in order to prepare our canvas for when we begin to alter the artwork. So just going to go ahead and nicely put a glob of white paint all over, and just keep doing that until it's thick enough to where we can't see the image on the back. And as you'll see here, different to the first episode, I'm not using the little desktop fan. I actually busted out my heat gun. That way it dries the acrylic paint not only faster, but it also distributes heat evenly, so that way I can get a whole dry canvas rather than have to hold the fan over and over. And I'm just going to go ahead and pass my finger, and as you can see, nothing moved, none of the paint lifted, so it's ready for a second coat. And just be generous if you ever try to do this like I am here. Just put on white paint continuously until that image that you're trying to get rid of is completely opaque and white. I only choose white because that is what will help bring the color out the most. And here I am just going ahead with the second pass with my heat gun to make sure that the canvas is dry. And over here I realized that the heat was too high, and then it created some bubbling textures on the white paint, which I don't mind because it gives me an idea on how to add texture for cards and that have Pokemon that do have a texture on their skin. That's for another episode. But right there I'm just checking again, and we got our paint completely dry, but you can still see the image in the back, and we don't want that. So we're just going to go ahead and throw in a third coat, even thicker this time, and as you can see, that white is starting to look really nice. So we just want to keep doing that, like I mentioned before, until it's completely opaque. And that's basically what it's going to be until we completely prepare the canvas. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'll just pass through with the heat gun, but now I'm doing it off camera, so I don't know which style looks better, so I'll just include both of them anyways, as you can see in the mirror reflection, and lifting it over. The canvas is nice and ready. We're just going to jump right into sketching it. Now, again, I improved a lot from the last episode, not only in techniques, but how I'm doing this as well. Cubone was a more difficult Pokemon to draw because it has a lot more different details and textures on it. But I figured with Pikachu, I wanted to keep that simple, round, big chunk boy aesthetic. So I'm just making him look like a little bent over bean. And I love that, so I just went and rolled with it. And Cubone, I actually had to prepare a couple of sketches in my notebook in order to get just what I was looking for proportions. But with this one, I just felt it, and you can see that I'm not holding back. I'm just running with this. And yeah, I wanted to make sure I catch that classic aesthetic of him being chunky, but at the same time putting on my unique touch. And the good thing is I'm going very lightly with this pencil, but this camera picks it up nicely, so it looks dark enough for you to follow the process as well. And basically that was all I wanted to do with this Pikachu, make him round and fat and cute again. So we're just gonna go and do that, adding some details. I was debating whether or not to add a nose or not, but I figured he looks 10 times cuter without a nose, so I just went that route and just kept going, adding some shadowing right there, some thicker outline to the back, so I know when I go over with the marker, it'll be a lot easier to just do the basic outline without messing up or closing any details that I don't want to be closed. Okay, so I'm back and we have our completed Pikachu sketch. Now we gotta move on to the inking process, which this time around wasn't as difficult until we get to the background. So I'm just gonna pull out my Stadler liner pens, which are fantastic, and this time around, since I used a heat gun to dry the paint, it was applied way easier than I was expecting, which helped me get through the inking process, or at least most of it, without a single problem, which was fantastic because this is usually the part of the process that takes the longest. So I'm just going over here and getting that basic shape down with the liner. I wanted to go not too thin, but as well not too thick. That way, just to give the general shape before we start adding the details, because once we go there, there's no going back, like, at all. So there I am, just giving that rough outline. Loved how that mouth came out. Not suggestive at all. Now I'm just gonna go outline those cheeks. The cheeks were kind of hard to outline because it looks like there is no neck nor torso, but trust me, there's a torso and there's a neck. It's just hidden under all that nice chunk. Now I'm just going to be outlining his hair, his little two hairs that stick out, and his ears, which honestly, again, they came out way better than I expected. Everything just came together. I had that idea. I wanted him to look like a fat jelly bean looking mouse, and there he is. So after that, it's just a process of being patient, because you also do have to be careful while you're inking it and not have your hand in the way, so that way the ink doesn't smudge. And I learned that the first time around when I was working on Cubone. So again, improvements for every episode, I say. Oh, as you can see from this jump cut, I did exactly that. I was able to erase the pencil outline and everything looks fantastic. So that means we're ready to move on to my favorite part of the process, the coloring. And I usually favor crayons over anything because of a technique that I found from a YouTuber named Echo Gillette. I'll reference and link her YouTube channel in the comment section below, or the about section. I don't even know what it's called. Anyways, the reason why I like the crayons for this process specifically is because since I'm working behind my phone/camera that I'm using for this series, the colors pop on the screen, so I know exactly where it is that I still have to hit an area with color. Where can I add different accents and shading? And since I heat up the canvas right before I do coloring, the color from the crayon bleeds wonderfully. And when I mean bleed, I don't mean in the sense that it gets runny. I mean that it's applied with little to no problem. As you can see with this yellow, that's super vibrant. Absolutely love that. So I'm just hitting him with a nice little base coat of yellow. And I think for a future video, I'll actually show the crayon color and what it is. But this one, I was just so into it. And when I get into it, I usually forget any idea that I have in my head. I just see the finished product and I'm working towards that goal. And as you can see, I chose a yellow that's more of a brownish tint to bring out certain parts of his body, like the roundness in his ears. And after that, I'm just going to hit that with the brush so that we can get any excess crayon particles from the wax off the canvas, so that way we don't have any chance of ruining any part of the Pikachu that we don't want to be, well, yellow. And after that is where I earlier mentioned we had a little bit of problems. Well, not just yet. It was with the cheeks. The cheeks were no problem because they came out a little rosier than I wanted, so I went into my crayon vault, which is behind the camera, to go look for even more red crayon. I did a couple swatches off screen to choose which would be the best, and after a while, this was the one we're using right now was the best choice. So then afterwards, I just went through, and I don't know why I pushed my crayons back. They look nice. I started adding the brown tints and accents to his body, and here is where I ran into a problem. The back part of those lines in his body are super thin with ink. So when I did pass my brown crayon through, the ink did lift a little, but it was no problem because I would later pass through with an ink pen. I don't think I did it on camera, but don't worry, it gets fixed later on. And then afterwards, we're done with the Pikachu. You can see the finished Pikachu, and it looks amazing. Way better than I thought. And I was on to the part that I like, but not as much as the coloring of the actual Pokemon, which is making a background. I don't want to ever leave the card completely blank unless I really can't think of a background to make for it. So I thought, well, you first find Pikachu in the original games in Viridian Forest, where you can at least have the chance to counter one. So I'm like, why not actually put it in a forest-like background? So I added some grass to the foreground, which may look like it was an accident, but don't worry, it was planned. I did want the grass to look like he was in between it, which is why I put that shadow down in the first place, to give it that depth. So that grass in the front that is also, putting some green on the Pikachu is totally intentional. There's good moments and there was bad moments. But after all was said and done, we persevered. And because of it, we got ourselves a Pikachu to add to our collection. And I gotta say, it turned out a lot better than I was expecting. We got a little shaky there with the ink work towards the end because it's really hard to not only use an inking pen after you've put on layers of acrylic paint and then topped it off with crayon. I think it turned out pretty well. I love the way the Pikachu came out, so far it's going to be on the top of my list, even though we've only done 2 cards. But that being said, I believe now we have about 149. Yeah. It's definitely, we got this. 149, no problem. And that brings us to a wrap on this episode of Pokemon TCAA. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I am your host, Lee Satoshi. It was a pleasure, and I hope you'll join us next time as we continue our journey to not catch them all, but to paint them all. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Yeah, that's English. And leave a like if you like the video, and feel free to share so more people can see and they can join us on our adventure. Till next time, bye!